And so this video is going to cover how to complete the inventory purchases workflow in GoCanvas. That's that first form that I was telling you about where we record all the details of the inventory items that we've purchased. Now, before we talk about the form specifically, you need to know that there are two basic types of resources that you're going to need always to complete the inventory purchases form. The first is that you'll need 3 screenshots from the purchasing platform, which we'll talk about in depth in a second. And when I say from the purchasing platform, I mean the platform where we purchase the item. And these 3 screenshots are going to be from the purchase of the specific item that you're trying to enter. We'll go through those in just a second. The second, though, is a reference table. Well, it's several, actually. It's about 4 reference tables and guides that will help you identify other information needed to complete inventory purchases, things like the collection or the gemstone type, things like that. And that can all be found in the same spreadsheet, which I've included a link to here. And we'll discuss what those reference tables and guides are and how to use them in later on in the slides. But basically, you need 2 main things. You need the 3 screenshots, and you need that spreadsheet with all the reference tables and guides. Now, talking about the screenshots individually, there's 3 of them that you need. The first is the proof of purchase screenshot, and this is going to be the screenshot from the item's purchase history that shows the purchase price and the purchase date. And depending on the platform, it's going to also show other information such as the shipping address, tracking number, payment method, etc. Let's look at what that looks like right now. Let's look at a Poshmark example. So if we go, and it's going to look a little bit different on each site, right? But if we go into Posh and we look at my purchases, you look at my purchases, you can see all the items that were purchased here. So let's just pick one. Let's pick the 7mm bracelet, second from the top. If we go in there and we click on that, this is the screen that shows us the date it was purchased and the purchase amount, and also some other information like the shipping address. So this would be screenshot number 1. Then the second screenshot is going to be the item image. This is the screenshot of the first photograph shown on the listing for the item we've purchased, okay? So the reason that we need this screenshot is because we have to reconcile all the stuff we've purchased against these lists of my purchases on all the platforms. And you see how each one of these has a little image, a little thumbnail next to it. It's extremely helpful for us when we have the same exact image so we can match it up. So let's go, we'll click on the 7mm bracelet again. And we'll click on that little image at the top. It's going to open it up in the listing. It's going to be always the first image in the listing. So I'm going to go ahead and screenshot that. And then I'm going to crop it. It's okay if you forget to crop it, but we really want it cropped because of the way that this information finally gets imported into a dashboard where we see it. So I'm going to crop it. That's our item image, okay? So the final screenshot that we need in order to complete the inventory purchases form is the listing description. This is a screenshot showing the item's description, and will also be where you find information like the item's size and what collection it's from and any add-ons included, things like that. So that's going to be still on the same page where we got the item image, right? If you just scroll down to where the listing description is, and then you'll grab a screenshot of that, right? And so, and these are going to be basically, you can pull these on every platform, but it'll be located in slightly different places, obviously, depending on which platform you're on. And I've got some examples of the layouts on various platforms, but it's fairly straightforward to get them. And let's talk about, I think the next slide talks about how you get them. Okay, so you'll obtain these 3 screenshots one of 2 ways. So when you first start inputting inventory purchases, like now, you will get these screenshots predominantly from Asana. They'll be located on the board titled Foreman's Board under the column heading To Do Input Inventory Purchases. But what's going to happen is when Ronnie and I make a purchase, we will take these 3 screenshots for you. Sometimes we'll take a 4th or 5th screenshot just because, like, let's say payment method may not be in that screenshot or some other information we need you to have is in there. But those are the 3 screenshots you need to upload but still look at the other screenshots that we've added to pull any information you can. So let's look at the Asana board for a second. So Foreman's project board is right here, and the column that we're talking about is the to-do. It says to-do inventory purchases because that lets you know that those are the inventory purchases that we want you to input into the GoCanvas inventory purchases form. So let's click on this one right here at the top, which is the one we were just looking at. You can see here that Ronnie and I have already screenshotted this one and uploaded it for you. And so you can grab this from here. Now, let's look at another example, because the next thing that your slides say is that for at the beginning of you doing this, before you're fully trained, we're going to annotate and underline as much of the information as possible that you need to pay attention to on the screenshot or card. We may even make some notes. Don't count on us doing that 100% of the time. In some examples, we may not have a chance to underline anything, but when we can, or when we have underlined something, pay special attention to it because it's underlined for a reason, because it's supposed to be entered at some point. Here's an example of an annotated screenshot. So you can see here that I have underlined 5mm choker. I've underlined David Yurman because that's information you'll need to answer in the inventory purchases. I'm letting you know, I'm circling silver, which is me letting you know that it's made out of silver. And then over here on the proof of purchases image, I've underlined London and Lilu because that's the account that it was purchased on, which you'll need. And I'm also underlining that it was a redeemable credit. That's the payment method. Now, you can see I've not underlined anything else on this page, like the purchase date and the purchase price, even though you'll need that information. That's because that's found in the standard place. But redeemable credit is not the standard payment method. Typically, we're paying by card or PayPal. So I'm underlining that to draw special attention to it so you can select that in payment method. So that's what I mean by we'll annotate the cards. So that's at the beginning of you filling out this form. That's how you will get what you need to fill out. Now, let me get back to my slide. After you become more familiar with inventory purchases workflow, and you also have access to more and more of the sites that we purchase from, instead of waiting for us to provide those screenshots, you'll just log onto the sites every day and look to see what new purchases we've made. You'll grab the screenshots yourself and you'll complete the workflow for all new purchases since the last time you made entries. That's going to be great. I mean, honestly, as soon as you feel comfortable doing that on Poshmark and Mercari, since you already have access to those platforms, I would let you just run with that because that's going to allow you to manage your own workflow. It'll give you way more hours and you don't have to wait around for us to get it to you. Now, one thing I will say is that when you do that yourself, you still want to take, in addition to like completing inventory purchases in GoCanvas, you still want to take those 3 screenshots and create a new card in Asana. So you would just add it, and you would add it right here, right? You would put you can number it or whatever, and you can add the screenshots you took. That way we know that you've taken the screenshots and we don't need to send it to you. And then the other important thing to know about Asana is that once you've completed inventory purchases, and this is critical, you need to drag this card over to completed. And that way we know that that's already been entered. And then when that item arrives, and we do arriving shipments workflow for it, which we do here because we have to have hands on the item, we'll delete this off of this completed list. So that's how we're going to keep track of what is outstanding and what needs to be completed on this workflow, if that makes sense. And definitely you'll add your screenshots both on to GoCanvas when you're completing that form, the inventory purchases form, and add them here and put them in the completed column once you've completed that purchase so that we're not adding it later or wondering if it's in the system. Okay, so we've talked about the screenshots that you need. I said that was the first thing you would need to complete inventory purchases. The second you'll need are these reference tables and charts. And these are all contained on the same spreadsheet. I was going to put the link at the bottom. I'll add that before I send you a copy of these slides, but I do have the link here on this first slide. But these reference charts and tables include the purchase details default selections. But you'll know what all these are by the end of this video. So if that sounds confusing, just hang on and we'll get to it. The gemstone type, the collection that the item is from, and then identifying any additional add-ons that come with the item. So those are the four sections that are in the spreadsheet as reference tables that you'll need to reference in order to correctly complete inventory purchases. And we'll talk about each of those individually right now. So let's talk about the first reference table, the purchase details and default selections. So the reason that we had to create this reference table is that not all the information you need to complete inventory purchases will be shown on the screenshot you will be provided. Specifically, we're talking about the proof of purchase screenshot. For example, inventory purchases will ask you to identify the payment method used for the purchase, but information identifying which credit card or debit card was used for the purchase is limited on most platforms. I'll give you an example. Let me find you an eBay screenshot real quick. This is a picture of a proof of purchase screenshot from eBay's platform. You can see here that you have, the date it was purchased, you have the order total, you even have the tracking number, but you don't have our payment method or our shipping address in this. And just like most or some of the proof of purchases screenshots from various platforms won't have the payment method on there, they also sometimes will be lacking the shipping address as well as the username login that is used on the account. And the other two pieces of information, in addition to purchase a payment method that you'll need to use the reference guide for, that is not always on the screenshots for proof of purchase, is the shipping address and the username or account login. So since there's a lot of information on that slide, I created a summary on this in notes for you. So basically it says, purchase details default selections guide is needed to help find the following information when proof of purchase screenshot does not have it listed. And that's payment method, shipping address, and the account username, the account/username. So basically the account that we logged in through. So that's what you'll be using the guide for. And by the way, if the screenshot that you're working with has that information, for example, the Poshmark's proof of purchase screenshot does have the account username login on the screenshot. So if the screenshot that you're working with does have that information, definitely reference that. Don't use the default guide. And the reason the username and login is important is because we actually use various multiple accounts on the same platforms to purchase inventory. There's several reasons why we do that. I won't go into all the details. But even though we use multiple accounts on each platform, we typically have one account that we use, 90% of the time, and the secondary account we use only in certain circumstances. And that's actually what the default guide is based on. Let's go to the next slide and I'll explain more. So this slide explains that we use multiple accounts, like I just mentioned, but also that we typically always have a different shipping address and a unique shipping address linked to the account username. And also we typically have a unique payment method linked to each account. So for example, if we had two eBay accounts under two different usernames, one eBay account A would go with shipping address A and payment method A, and eBay account B would go with shipping address B and payment method B. The reason that we do this is because a lot of times these platforms don't allow people to have multiple accounts. And if they figure out that you're using multiple accounts, for example, if you're using the same shipping address or the same payment method on two separate accounts, they'll shut down both. And so we have to keep our accounts separate in every way, all the way down to that type of information. But that's going to actually help you in determining what to input for payment method, for shipping address, once you know the account username that we're logged into. And that's what the default guide is based on. Let's go to the next screenshot, which is a flowchart of how this works. So this first flowchart shows you an example that I kind of just walked you through verbally. If you have purchasing platform A, which is, we'll call it eBay, then you have a primary account that we're using to buy all of our most of our inventory, and that's on the top. And then that's linked to its own payment method, and that's linked to its own shipping address. And then on the bottom, you might have our secondary account, which is also linked to its own payment method and its own shipping address. Basically, the default guides, it works so that it tells you that this is the primary account, and these are the shipping address and the payment methods that are default listed or default attached to it. So you can assume that unless otherwise stated, that when it's a certain platform, it's always going to be the primary account. Okay, so now here's that same flowchart, but with a real life example for the Poshmark platform. Now, if you were inputting an item that was purchased on Poshmark, you could see at the bottom of the screenshot, like I just showed you, what the account username was. And if it's the London and Lilu, the primary account, which is on the top of the flowchart here, then you would know that unless we put a note in there stating otherwise, that the payment method you need to select was the Chase Bank debit card, and that the address you need to select is the 3621 Hutch Drive address. Now let's say that you actually are dealing with a purchase that was made on the Alon O'Neill account, which you would determine actually by looking at the proof of purchase screenshot, because Poshmark does actually have that information on their proof of purchase screenshots. But on eBay, for example, if this was an account other than the primary, we would put a note on there saying, hey, we purchased this from this account. We would actually write that on the screenshot. But once you determine that it's purchased on the Alon O'Neill account, then you know automatically that it's the Capital One Mary Haywood card ending in 6482 that was the payment method. And you know that the default shipping address would be 11661 Preston Road. So that's basically how the default guide works. And my caveat on this is that if it's anything other than the default selections, let's say that we purchased this on the Alon O'Neill account, but we didn't use the Capital One card, we used PayPal. And for some reason, we sent it to an address that's not the 11661 Preston Road address. If that information isn't already shown on the screenshot, we will absolutely annotate it on there for you. We'll write on the screenshot what that information is. So whenever you see us having written notes on a screenshot, definitely pay attention to those. Or if we've added an additional screenshot, there are times where we'll have 4 screenshots attached to this on a card because we're also taking a screenshot of our checkout screen, which shows the payment method and the shipping address. For example, this is a screenshot of the checkout screen from eBay when we were purchasing an item, and you can see here both the shipping address and the payment method used. So if we've added a screenshot like this, then use this data to fill it out and don't use the default selections. So that information we will give you, otherwise you're going to assume that it's going to be the default selections. So just to review, it'll be the primary account unless otherwise stated. So if there's no, let's say you get an eBay screenshot, there's no account information listed anywhere on it, then you're going to assume that it's the primary account. And then you're going to assume that it's the accounts, the payment method and the shipping address attached to that account. Now let's say that you get a screenshot that has an annotation on there with an account username. Well, in that case, you're going to put in that account username and you're going to look at the default guide to see what the default payment method and shipping address is for that account. And in that case, you would use those as what you would input. Finally, if you get a screenshot that has both the account username and also another annotation for the shipping address or payment method, then you're going to use the defaults except when you have other information provided on the screenshots. If you have any questions about that form, be sure to message me immediately, and we can even do a video conference or something, because it's simple, but it's really important that you understand it. So now let's take a look at the actual guide that I've started putting together for you with the default selections. Okay, so here is the current purchase details default selections reference table. I've not added all of our accounts yet, but I will be adding them as we go along. I also wanted to tell you that you need to check this basically multiple times a week. Pretty much every time you go to add items into inventory purchases, because we'll be updating these frequently. For example, last week we quit using our London and Lilu eBay account for all the purchases going forward. and we started using instead Find My Kind as our primary eBay account. I also, it's not on this spreadsheet, but out to the right-hand side in the final column, when we've moved an account from being our primary to another secondary or whatever, just not primary anymore, but it used to be primary, I'll put a note to the side saying, as of purchases past this date, we will be using the new primary account. So let's say like in 3 weeks, we opened a new eBay account and Find My Kind was no longer primary, but it should have been primary for the purchases that we'd already done before that date. I would move that out of that row and put it lower, put the new primary information in, but then put a note next to Find My Kind saying effective this date, this is no longer the primary. So actually I went ahead and updated our spreadsheet to show exactly what I was just talking about, because I realized that that actually applies to the accounts we have on here for eBay right now. Our London and Lilu account was closed on 4/22, and before then that would have been the primary account. So for all purchases made on eBay that were purchased before April 22nd, you would use London and Lilu, and that's what that note says next to it. And then any purchases you're entering into the purchased inventory workflow that were purchased after 4/23, on or after 4/23, then you would use the Find My Kind as the primary default account.